Welcome, everybody. Nick DiVirgilio here at Sweetwater, hanging out with the great Calvin Rodgers. Calvin, welcome.
Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you for having me, man.
Man, it's a blast just hearing you play, seeing you play in person. You know, it's cool to watch on video and YouTube and stuff, but hearing you and seeing you play in person is a real joy.
I appreciate it.
And I mean that for sure.
Thanks, man. Thanks so much.
You drove out from Chicago, so thank you for making the long drive. We've made some great content with Calvin today, some playthroughs, some educational stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're best known, you've had lots of great gigs in your career, but you're really well known in the gospel world, of that world of drumming. And I was asking you before we started rolling the cameras, when did gospel drumming really take off? Because it's been around for a long time, but in the last number of years, it's everywhere, gospel chops and lots of educational stuff on that subject. So when did that really kind of come to the forefront?
Yeah, there's so many drummers that are responsible just for the gospel drummers kind of being pushed into the forefront, seeing so much of the limelight. You know, there are drummers, if I go back to, even Joel Smith, who back in the 70s and the 80s worked with artists as the DeBarge family. He worked with Al Jarreau, but he was the nephew of Walter and Edwin Hawkins and a drummer for them, an incredible drummer. But then you got the likes of people like Jeff Davis. I think over the last 20 years, Jeff Davis did a lot to champion for the gospel musicians and helping them get recognized and pushing them in the right direction, introducing them to higher ups and things like that. He did a lot, but I would have to say Gerald Hayward and I think Aaron Spears are so much responsible for just the recognition and the attention that musicians get. We've had musicians from churches playing outside of church for years.
Right, of course.
Gordon Campbell, again, Gerald Hayward started with Hezekiah Walker, who's a very well famed and noted gospel musician, but he's gone on. Gerald Hayward started there. Aaron Spears started with a gospel band in D.C. called Gideon. And they were like the gospel version of maybe Mint Condition or something like that. Right. In any case, you got all these musicians and these guys that were doing other things, playing gospel music. But I think those guys really, really made people just stop and listen at those guys. And of course, I have to say also Thomas Pridgen, because Thomas Pridgen was notably, his grandmother was like deep rooted in like the Gospel Music Workshop of America. I met Thomas there, but he really, really grabbed the attention of people when people start hearing him playing with, I believe Christian Scott was the trumpeter he was playing with, and then the Mars Volta. So I mean, but knowing his gospel background, his Christian background, just made people go, oh, maybe there's something there to listen to, and it made space for a lot of us to to gain some recognition. So major shout out to all of those guys.
Well, yeah, that's a great history lesson. I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
One thing in hearing you play, and speaking about a lot of those drummers you just mentioned, you guys, you hit the drums really hard, and it's great. The drums really sing, but you're playing as hard as any rock drummer out there. and so I see a correlation in rock and roll and funky, groovy gospel music. And when you're in these situations playing in a church setting, from what I've seen, you're not holding back at all. You guys are going for it.
Yeah.
So
I think that a lot of times people, when you tell people you're playing at church, they think about the cathedral. I mean, I grew up a Catholic. Yeah.
So there wasn't anything like that in the church I grew up in.
That's not no. Church is a rock show now, man. LED walls. You got smoke and fog, and worship teams and singers and, huge bands, horn sections. And the musicians, I think, are some of the most gifted musicians.
Totally.
And then, in church, growing up in church, nobody liked a guy that just didn't really dig in on the drums. Okay. So, that was one of the things that just really, really, my dad was just really, he drilled into me. He was like, man, I got to feel that kick drum. I feel the kick drum, that snare. He was really, really, the two things he would just go crazy on me about, not being able to feel me and then slowing down.
Now, was your father a musician?
My dad was a musician. He was a great musician and songwriter. I lost him in 2014, but
I'm
he was
sorry.
but he was my greatest influence, and
Nice.
he and my mom pushed me, and they pushed me as hard as they could, man. But all love to them. But yeah, my dad was just, he hated a soft drummer, so he's like, hit the drum, don't be afraid of it. So yeah.
Because we do a lot of business in the House of Worship
Yeah.
arena here at Sweetwater. It's great business for us here, and we have a lot of really great clients and friends in that world. But a lot of times, I guess it depends on the church.
Yeah.
Where a lot of questions about volume, dealing with volume,
Yeah.
playing behind the plexiglass. How can you bring drum volume down and stuff like that? So it's to me as a drummer and a rocker my whole life, it's fun to hear that you can let loose in that situation.
Yeah. Somehow, I mean, you got some houses of worship that are small. Some of them, if you got new ministries going up, sometimes they haven't necessarily had a chance to treat the rooms,
Right.
so they're looking to to definitely want to quiet. And then the quintessential engineer just always wants to put the house around the drums. Because it makes great for mixing, but I prefer I like that energy in the room. So if we can have it out there, then just have it out there. Yeah.
There was one, I got to mention this one thing, we'll get into some other stuff here in just a second, but I was down the YouTube rabbit hole watching some stuff, and there was this great video of you playing like at a midnight service. It was like maybe a 24-hour sort of late night thing you were playing. You were behind the stage, the singers were in front, and you were down sort of in a pit.
Okay.
The bass player was next to you over here, and there was a bunch, they had to all be drummers.
yeah.
Standing behind you because they were just watching you, and every time you did like a really cool fill or something, they would just laugh and push each other around. It was a cool thing to watch.
It was at a Church of God in Christ convention, and I was playing with Fred Hammond. Yeah. Yep.
That was a cool one. That was a really fun one.
Yeah.
So, can you do me a favor? Would you show me something? I want to see, can you teach me one of your, what's a great, like a Calvin Rodgers signature thing I could try and see if I can play?
Sure. So I talked about the paradiddle diddle earlier,
Okay.
which is one of my favorite rudiments, and I was talking about playing it in the funk groove, right?
Okay.
But another way I've played it is now instead of just playing it around the toms and putting the diddle on the kick drum and then playing the accent on the snare and then playing the lick around the snares or the toms,
Okay.
I'll double the diddle with the right hand. I'll double what the right hand does on the right foot,
Okay.
on the diddle diddle. So you got, right?
Okay.
So you could technically do it that way, but a few different ways that I've kind of become noted for was playing it maybe in 12/8, which is kind of like a blues shuffle. Or yeah.
Okay.
So basically play the paradiddle diddle maybe for 2 beats and then alternate between singles and doubles after that. So that's one way.
Okay.
You want to try that one?
Sure. Okay.
So let's just take a slow shuffle.
Let me get it
in
on
a
my hand.
triplet thing.
Oh, I got to get it.
Yeah.
I'll work on it.
Yeah,
I can do it without the groove,
without the groove.
but I'm just learning. I'm a newbie over here.
Yep.
I'm going to work on that one after the video's over. I'm going to go back and shed that in my office a little bit.
Another way is maybe there's a groove. Well, there could be a.
What are you doing with your hands?
So I'm putting the kick drum on the 16th displacement note right before I start the. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the way, basically the way you can hear it. So
Okay.
you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, instead of playing the drive on the kick drum, just go.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
We were talking about this earlier too. Drummers love to share things with other drummers.
Yeah.
I think it's more than any other instrument too. Sometimes, guitar players are notorious about how do you get that sound in there. They put the towel over their pedal board. They don't want to know how you find that delay or that swell reverb and stuff. Drummers, we love to share things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we're all one big musical family here,
I
right?
mean, you never stop learning. The
Totally.
minute you stop learning, you're done.
Speaking of learning, what were your big influences growing up as a kid? I know we talked about some of this stuff at lunch today, but who really did you look up to growing up?
Yeah. So I grew up in Chicago, and there were a lot of local drummers there that played at local churches there. That were guys that were not necessarily known drummers,
Right.
But they played at local churches. Guys like Cameron Jarmon, who was a great drummer, great session drummer, play for like Clay Evans and Fellowship. They were big, they were pivotal during the traditional gospel music era. You got guys like Arnold Bayman, who was a musician at the church that I grew up playing in. My two cousins, Larry Roberts and Beerus Bolton, were my first drum instructors. So they were two drummers at the church I grew up at. But after those guys, I started just listening to a lot of Joel Smith, again from Oakland, played with the Hawkins. He was a huge influence of mine, and I wanted to be just like him. I probably only listened to him until I met Teddy Campbell. And once I met Teddy Campbell, I wanted to play like him. I wanted to dress like him. I wanted to talk like him. Nice. I wanted to walk like him. Teddy had such an influence on me, and I got to spend a lot of time with him. I got a chance to learn a lot from him. He was definitely a huge influence. He's at the very, very top of the list of drummers that greatly influenced me. He was just, I learned so much from that guy, and I continue to learn from him. And the great thing about Teddy is that, he's, even though he's a different drummer now, I'm still learning so much from him. And as a student, you always want to get around your teacher, and you finally want to see if you done caught up to him.
Sure.
And so sometimes I'll hear Teddy and I'll be like, man, I think I'm catching up to him. And then he'll just quietly assassinate my emotions and everything that's inside of me, thinking that I'm in a loving, brotherly kind of way. But yeah, Teddy's been a great influence on me. Will Kennedy, again, was a super heavy influence on me. Ricky Lawson was a humongous influence. Two more gentlemen. Terry Baker, who currently plays for Kirk Franklin.
Okay.
He's drumming for Kirk Franklin. I studied him a lot. I call him Sensei. I studied him a lot because when I was starting to do a lot of sessions live in studio, he was just the blueprint. He was the session drummer for the producers that I loved, so I studied a lot of him. He's a phenomenal musician, and his daughter plays too. He's a great guy, and then lastly Dave Weckl. So those musicians probably have had the greatest influence on me. Those are guys I listen to a lot. Yeah.
Beautiful. You were telling me earlier that you went on the road with Aretha Franklin.
Yes.
That had to be a lot of fun because she's a legend, and playing for a legend like that, how free were you to be yourself, or on the conversely, how confined were you? Did you have to play a certain way, or could you be free in that situation playing for an artist like that?
Yeah, one of the ways I got in was just that her music director and conductor, I had worked with him on a number of projects, and she was just like, I got a guy that I'm gonna bring in, because the other drummer was transitions. I got a guy I'm gonna bring in. He's a younger guy though, you know. I think we could use the energy, the shot in the arm. And so she was really playing, like my first gig, she was really she let me know she was listening, to, you know, just for one, to see, you know, if I was seasoned enough to play with her, if experienced, you know, enough to play with her, but also was looking for some energy from me, you know. So I have this funny story about when we were, the first night we got to the end of the show and we're playing Respect. And so, you know, we're playing the groove, and she's up there dancing, she's doing her thing, and then she does like this. And I'm like, okay. And then she turns around and does it again, and she looks at me and she goes, and she lets me know, when she does that, she wants me to accent. And so I did it the second time, and then she came and danced in front of me. And she was a very, very nice person to work with, exceptionally gifted. And she walked in, like when you saw her, you know, they called her the queen, and not in an arrogant manner, but she definitely walked in that kind of that aura. She had that aura, like she respectfully, she earned that, and she owned it. So when she came in the room, she, you know, you knew she was there, and yeah,
nice.
It was great.
And also the Isley Brothers?
Yeah, I got a chance. I started working with the Isley Brothers in like 2010.
Okay.
And it's been 11 years now almost, and we got some incredible stuff happening. I've been touring with them, and we just did a documentary and live concert culminating their 60th year anniversary of Shout. That song came out in 1959. Ronald has been a joy. I've been working with them for the last maybe 4 or 5 years as the music director. So, and he's been super patient with me, him and his brother, but also just, man, teaching me a lot. He and his family, you know, have just been really, really wonderful to me. You know, shout out to Ronald and Ernie, Kim, Candy, Dee Dee, all of those. They just really, that's my family, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
And they really.
I mean, how many artists have been making music that long?
That long, yeah.
They're still doing it.
Still doing it.
And all the classic songs, so many classic songs. It's great stuff.
Yeah, well, I just to say, like we pointed out, his first album was his biggest album, and then, like, you would think you hear a lot of guys that just they're not able to keep up with that.
Sure.
You know, the pressure of coming up with something that's, you know, but he did it, and for 60 more years after that.
Amazing.
But
stuff.
yeah, it's been a blast, man.
Cool, man. Well, congratulations on your career and everything you've achieved so far, and I know you're not going to stop anytime soon, so best of luck on the future and everything. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, everybody. Thanks to Pearl and Meinl for the support of Calvin, and just come back anytime, man. And can we play some more drums before we get out of here?
Yeah, man. Thank you to Nick and everyone here at Sweetwater. It's been a blast. I've had an incredible day, man.
Sweet.
And yeah, let's do it, man.
Let's do it.